we are going to talk about the clinical scenario based questions from the general physiology. So our first question tells us that there is a 30-year-old patient presenting with the symptoms of dehydration and electrolyte imbalance following a prolonged bout of severe diarrhea. The patient's blood tests show abnormally low levels of potassium and chloride. The doctor suspected impaired transport mechanisms across cell membrane contributing to these electrolyte imbalances. Which of the following transport processes is most likely affected in this patient, leading to observed hypokalemia and hypochloremia? So, we must understand that whenever there is diarrhea, there is a lot of loss of fluid as well as electrolytes in the diarrhea fluid or the intestinal fluid, which is lost with the stools. So here, because of the loss of the intestinal fluid, the patient loses important electrolytes like potassium, chloride and sodium. So normally whenever there is decrease in the electrolyte levels in the body, the kidneys try to compensate for that loss and they increase the absorption of various electrolytes through the secondary active transport. So here, when even the sodium is lost, the secondary active transport fails to create that electrochemical gradient and hence would result in the decrease in the electrolytes in the blood. So in this, the available options, they have the which of the following would be most likely affected. So the simple diffusion is not that affected. The facilitated diffusion is also, is not the likely answer to this. The primary active transport keeps on working on the basolateral membrane, but it is the secondary active transport that is affected because of the loss of the electrochemical gradient, because of loss of sodium in the water which is lost in diarrhea. So hence the correct answer is the secondary active transport. In our next question, we see a 35-year-old female patient presenting with a history of recurrent epileptic seizures. Despite following a strict medication regime, the seizures persisted and the patient's condition deteriorated over time. Voltage-gated ion channels most likely involved in the generation and propagation of epileptic seizures in this patient is. Now we must understand that in a neuron, the initial segment of the neuron has abundant voltage-gated sodium channels which are responsible for the generation of impulse. So whatever and wherever we talk about this thing, the neuronal excitation will happen only because of the voltage-gated sodium channels. So here, the answer to this problem is A, where we have the choice as voltage-gated sodium channels. In this question, a 50-year-old male patient was admitted with symptoms of confusion, extreme thirst and reduced urine output. An imbalance in the extracellular fluid volume was suspected, leading to potential complications. The laboratory tests revealed the low sodium concentrations and low urine output despite adequate water intake. So this means the patient is having adequate water intake, but the output is less, which is resulting in retention of the water inside the body, resulting in dilutional hyponatremia, and there is imbalance in the extracellular fluid volume. So the first choice says euvolumic hyponatremia. This means the volume of the extracellular fluid or our body fluids remains normal and there is decrease in the sodium ion concentration. So we've already seen in the statement itself that the extracellular fluid volume is imbalanced. So the first option is eliminated. Second is hypervolumic hypernatremia. Our patient is having hyponatremia and definitely there is hypervolumic, but we are having is hyponatremia. The condition hypervolumic hypernatremia is seen in the intensive care units where the patient is infused with the saline for a long time. So it is actually iatrogenic, which is as a part of treatment which occurs, and it's a very important entity. It is also referred as the HHL. The third is syndrome of inappropriate ADH hormone secretion, SIAD. So here the ADH secretion is more, which results in the retention of the water, and it results in the dilutional hyponatremia, which somehow looks like our clinical scenario. And in diabetes insipidus, there is decrease in the secretion of ADH, resulting in more amount of this urine to be passed, which has a diuretic effect. So hence the appropriate answer here is SIAD, that is syndrome of inappropriate antidiuretic hormone secretion. A male patient is presented with generalized edema, that is fluid retention, and shortness of breath, which occurs because of the edema. The doctor suspected impaired osmotic pressure regulation. So here we are going to deal with the osmotic pressure regulation. The lab test shows low level of plasma proteins. There is hypoproteinemia, especially the albumin. Which of the following method is most suitable for directly measuring the osmotic pressure in the plasma of the patient? So now the best method to find out the osmotic pressure is the depression in the freezing point. So which out of these four choices tells us that? That is choice A. It's a direct question. So the answer is A. This is a very interesting question. A middle-aged female was brought to the emergency department with sudden loss of consciousness and muscle weakness. The doctor conducted a thorough examination to rule out any signs of cardiac abnormality. However, the patient's blood test revealed abnormally low levels of potassium, that is hypokalemia is there. Which of the following changes in the resting membrane potential is most likely responsible for the patient's symptoms of loss of consciousness and muscle weakness? So now this is one of my favorite questions where the students, they get confused with the role of potassium and the membrane potentials. So here, before we discuss further, let me just quickly do a recap of the electrolyte distribution. We know that the sodium ion is an abundant ion of the extracellular fluid, whereas the potassium is an abundant ion in the intracellular fluid, and the cell membrane is more permeable to the potassium ion. Hence the potassium ions, they keep on leaking outside the into the extracellular fluid from the cell, and the sodium ion permeability is almost negligible. So, seeing this scenario, whenever there is increase in the potassium ion concentration in the extracellular fluid, say in hyperkalemia, in that case, this permeability of the membrane, it decreases, which results in the increase in the potassium levels inside the cell, hence resulting in depolarization, or I would say there is increase in the membrane potential of the cell whenever there is hyperkalemia. Similarly, when there is hypokalemia, means this potassium level decreases further. Now, this is going to increase the permeability of potassium, and more amount of potassium will now leak out into the ECF. So, this is going to result in the hyperpolarization of the membrane potential or the resting membrane potential. So, remember, whenever there is hyperkalemia, it is going to result in depolarization, and whenever there is hypokalemia, it is going to result in hyperpolarization. So your answer is a direct question or direct answer, which is C. In our next question, a 45-year-old female patient presents with unexplained weight loss, weakness, and increased thirst. A disturbance in the water balance was suspected. An investigation was done to know the source of water gain or loss further. The most suitable method for determining whether the patient's symptoms are due to exogenous or endogenous water gain or loss are. Before we move further, we should understand that how our body fluid is distributed. So most of the body fluid is present in the intracellular space or the intracellular fluid, and 1/3 is present in the extracellular fluid, that is outside the cells. And the intracellular fluid and the extracellular fluid is separated by the cell membrane, right? And the extracellular fluid is further divided into the interstitial fluid and the plasma, which is present inside the blood vessels or the intravascular compartment. And this is separated by the capillary membrane. So now this here is your capillary membrane, and this is the cell membrane. Now we know that the cell membrane is selectively permeable, but whereas the capillary membrane is not selectively permeable to the electrolytes. So hence, if we know that there is exogenous or endogenous water gain, so the tonicity would be affected. There is free movement of electrolytes across the capillary membrane. The tonicity of the extracellular fluid compartment, either in the plasma or in the interstitial fluid, would be same. Whereas the water can move freely in the intracellular fluid compartment and the extracellular fluid compartment, whereas the electrolytes cannot do that as freely as water. So the only thing which is going to be different here or which can give you an idea about the exogenous or endogenous gain or loss is the plasma osmolality. Hence, our answer is measurement of the plasma osmolality. So, if there is endogenous shifting of the fluid between the compartments, the osmolality would be same, but whereas if there is exogenous increase or decrease, the osmolality would be affected. In our next question, an old age female patient with a history of chronic liver disease was admitted to the hospital with signs of ascites. Ascites is accumulation of fluid in the peritoneal cavity. Despite receiving treatment for liver disease, the patient's ascites persisted and worsened over time. The doctor suspected that the Donnan effect might be contributing to the abnormal fluid accumulation. What is the role of Donnan effect in the development of ascites in this patient? So now, in this patient, because of the liver disease, the patient is having a hypoproteinemia. So, hypoproteinemia is resulting in the decreased colloid osmotic pressure in the capillary blood of the patient. So, hypoproteinemia is resulting in the decreased colloid osmotic pressure in the blood of this patient. So, which results in the imbalance in the Starling forces, which further results in more filtration as compared to the reabsorption, and hence resulting in edema. So let us see what choices do we have. Increased reabsorption of fluid in the peritoneal cavity result in Donnan effect? No. Decreased oncotic pressure in the blood vessels results in the decreased Donnan effect. Donnan effect particularly refers to the reabsorptive capacity of the blood due to the colloid osmotic pressure and the electrolytes which are present in the blood, which results in the reabsorption of the fluid. Now, because of hypoproteinemia, the oncotic pressure is decreased and there is decrease in the Donnan effect. So, this appears quite right. The increase in the blood osmotic pressure increases the Donnan effect. Increased permeability of peritoneal membrane increases Donnan effect. So, in this, choice B looks more appropriate and it is closer to the answer, or it looks like the correct answer. So, I hope the questions related to the general physiology were clear, and I want to put a word of caution here that most of the questions from general physiology would be integrated with the other systems and could also be integrated with medicine. Hence, you have to actually see the problem and try to apply your knowledge, whatever you have learnt in physiology, and find out the physiological base behind that when we are talking about the applied physiology. Happy learning with DigiNerve.